Good afternoon. Welcome. Thanks so much for coming. Welcome to this afternoon in conversation with Pedro Almodóvar. My name is Cameron Bailey. Thanks for coming. I'm the CEO here at TIFF, and it's my great pleasure to be in conversation with Pedro. This is day 3 of the 48th Toronto International Film Festival, and we're glad that you're all here. I hope you're having a good festival so far. Yeah? Great. As we begin, we always want to take a moment to reflect on where we are, the land that we're on, and its history. We're located on the treaty lands and territory of the Mississaugas of the Credit and the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe, the Wendat, and the Haudenosaunee. And this is territory within the lands protected by the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Belt Covenant. It's home to many First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people, and we at TIFF are grateful to be working on this land and to be presenting the work of Indigenous artists from all over the world. We want to thank all of the people and the organizations that make what we do possible, beginning with our members, our donors, our supporters for championing our mission to transform the way people see the world through film. If you are interested in becoming a supporter, you can go online to tiff.net/support and get all the information there. We also want to thank our lead sponsor, Bell, and our major sponsors, RBC, Bulgari, and Visa. And we want to thank our public supporters, the Government of Canada, the Government of Ontario, Telefilm Canada, and the City of Toronto, who all have been supporting us for many, many years. We'd also like to welcome a special guest who is with us today, the Ambassador of Spain in Canada, Mr. Alfredo Martinez Serrano. Welcome, Ambassador Serrano. And this In Conversation With series is presented by Visa. Thank you to them. There are some other In Conversation With events that we wanted to let you know about. We will also have Lee Byung-hun and Park Seo-jun on September the 11th, that's Monday. And then on September 15th, we will be in conversation with Sylvester Stallone. And on September 16th, in conversation with Andy Lau. So we're going to end it with a bang, literally, with 2 big action stars. For more information on those events and how to access them, you can go to tiff.net. And today, we have the distinct pleasure of being with a visionary filmmaker. Pedro Almodóvar has been a prolific figure in the international cinema landscape for nearly 50 years. From certified classics like Women on the Verge of a Nervous Breakdown, All About My Mother, recent triumphs like Pain and Glory, he's never stopped bringing his own personal vision to a wide range of cinematic genres and cultivating a style that is really his own. He won the Academy Award for Best International Film for Talk to Her in 2003, and his films have been a staple of this festival since the 1980s. He's also the recipient this year of the Jeff Skoll Award in Impact Media at this year's Tribute Awards, which take place tomorrow night. We're thrilled to present the North American premiere of his latest works, Strange Way of Life, and that's part of today's event. And we want to thank Mongrel Media and Sony Pictures Classics for providing us with the film. Thank you to them. Just a brief note about the format. Pedro will join me on stage for a conversation, and then we will screen Strange Way of Life before we resume the conversation, and then we'll also have some time for your questions towards the end. Please join me in welcoming one of my heroes in film, Mr. Pedro Almodóvar. Have with us Carla, who will provide interpretation. Pedro, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. This is wonderful.
To Toronto. I will tell you, I'll confess first that I fell in love with your films first in 1986. We had a spotlight on your work.
But you were a child at that moment.
No, I was about that tall. I discovered your early work. I remember being especially moved by Matador, and then 2 years later, you came back to the festival with Women on the Verge of a Nervous Breakdown, which won our People's Choice Award. And I remember seeing first Pepe Lucy, Bomb and Other Girls, Labyrinth of Passion, What Have I Done to Deserve This? And I wonder if you could talk a little bit about what you remember from those early days when you were first taking your films beyond Spain to North America, because they were a revelation for so many of us. But what was it like to bring those films to Toronto, New York, and other places?
Well, you know, the first festival that I went out of Spain, the beginning, it was the 1984, I think. It was the Miami Film Festival that they used to screen many Spanish movies. So it was, I think it was 1983. So someone from the Museum of Modern Art, the MoMA in New York. So it was, at that moment, it was Dark Habits. And they were very impressed by that. The following year, I was with What Have I Done to Deserve This? They decided to screen it and to be part of the new directors, new films. This is the festival that the MoMA organized. So, I mean, I have to say that my baptism, it was in Miami, but immediately I was screening in New York. And both movies, they were very successful, and also Law of Desire and Marador. But I was very well known among, how can I say, the underground papers and the nightlife people. I mean, because all the movies were unrated at the moment. And we can release it like that. It was no problem because they were screened only in just the very small arty places. But just from Women on the Verge of a Nervous Breakdown. So I was like very fashionable, at that moment, among, this kind of night people in New York, which is fantastic because it's very joyful. Yeah. And with Women on the Verge of a Nervous Breakdown, then I start having a plural. It was released everywhere, and everywhere not only here. And the problem of becoming so fast, like not a mainstream director, but that my movies could be seen in many other theaters, then I had a problem with the immediate movie that it was Atame, Tie Me Up, Tie Me Down. Yeah. Then, at that moment, I was not, my spectators were broader than at the beginning. And then, I have a lot of problem with the MPAA that they wanted to give us an X, which is a stigma that you cannot.
Yeah, if you have an X rating in North America, your films cannot be shown in many theaters.
Sí, los periódicos no tienen por qué hacer crítica de una película X. Hay muchos menos cines pornográficos, la publicidad es mínima, con lo cual es un estigma enorme si te cae una X en una película.
Yeah, so it's a huge stigma because reporters can't print about the film. In the newspapers, there's only very few little theaters that will show the film, and so it really hampers the film.
But then I was working, the distributor were Miramax, with the Weinstein brothers, and they decided with me to sue the MPAA because it was completely unfair. Just to give an X to Tie Me Up, Tie Me Down. Even it was an explicit movie, but it was not a porno movie. So we sued them to the court of New York, and at the same moment, yeah, I know that there is a kind of evil. So they came with us to the court, and it was then when they gave us the right. They said that it was unfair, and they create a new rating that it was NC-17. So it was born, with Tie Me Up, but the problem now, listening or reading some interviews of Yorgos Lanthimos about Poor Things or Ira Sachs about Passengers, that now the people I mean, when they see an NC-17, they see through that, they see an X. So, you know, it's, it doesn't find out anything. It's a problem. But, well, you know, I was very, I mean, I was much happier when I was unrated because I didn't mind to have a rate. But when you are, you know, distributed to so many places, this is part of the price that you have to give, to pay.
Part of, I think, what was going on is that the films you were making were very revolutionary on a number of different levels. They were sexually more free than most of what we were seeing in North America. They were politically free as well because you were part of the scene that was emerging from the end of the dictatorship in Spain in the Fascist Era, informed by punk and the punk sensibility as well. And this whole, all of this was termed, I guess, the La Movida Madrileña. And that whole scene was brand new and was very shocking, I think, to a lot of North American viewers. And so you got caught up in this. Can you talk a little bit about that whole era in late 70s and early 80s, Madrid especially, which was a very unique time, and you came out of what was going on in art and music and film then?
Yeah, well, you know, when I was born as a filmmaker, that it was 1979, with my first movie, you know, I mean, it was the only moment that I could do a movie. It was impossible before, because you were living a strong and totalitarian dictatorship. And Franco died, fortunately, in 75. And then, you know, everything changed. And if you were young at that moment, it was wonderful. It was impossible to describe what is, I mean, to have access to all of freedom. So my movies are the celebration of that situation in Spain. And also the celebration of doing movies, because that was my vocation. And it was, I was working at that moment in the telephone company as an office assistant. And I mean, it was very difficult for someone without money and in that situation.
What were you like as an office assistant?
You know, I was ¿cómo se dice? Trabajos administrativos.
Yeah, doing administrative work.
Pero únicamente con un pelo larguísimo y que era un escándalo en la oficina.
Yeah, I wore very long hair and it was a scandal at the office.
Pero las dos primeras películas, Pepe y Lucibón y Laberinto de Pasiones, las escribí allí, en mi tiempo libre en la oficina.
But my first two films, Pepe Lucibón and Laberinto de Pasiones, Labyrinth of Passion, I wrote them there while I was working in the office.
Really?
Yeah, because I tried to make everything very fast, and then the free time, then I write my script. But not only that, I mean, during the 70s, even with Franco alive, I mean, my only school was just to make a lot of Super 8mm movies. When I arrived to Madrid, very young, I was 18, the school of cinema, it was closed by Franco because, you know, I mean, they thought that it was a nido de rojos.
A nest of reds.
And they prefer to close it. Okay. Curiously, you know, I mean, you have to make something about the cinema of that period in Spain, because curiously it was a decade, the 60s, very good. I mean, one of the best decades in terms of the quality of the movies. And the movies like The Executioner, or Berlanga, or La Caza from Carlos Saura, many of these movies, the censorship didn't recognize that they were very critic with the regime. So they find out when they go to the festivals and they got awards and with wonderful reviews. So I was saying that, well, the school it was closed because of that, because they were making a very good movies but completely against the Franquism. So when I start in the 79, I start with Pepe, and I did it in 16mm movie. And you know, I got the feeling that it was a year and a half of shooting because we didn't have enough money. We get a kind of crowdfunding with $3,000, and then we only have to buy the negative of the one hour. And you know, the people coming to the shooting, they came like to a party. And nobody thought that it was a movie that I wanted to screen in one theater. So I mean, after 1 year and a half, then I finished. It was a movie with a lot of imperfection, technically talking, and at that moment, Madrid and we were very much inspired of the English New Wave, immediately the punk, and also Warhol Factory, Morrissey, and John Waters. And this was this kind of the influence that I have for my first two movies. They saw the movie is very dirty. That should be
in a good way, dirty.
Hmm?
Dirty in a good way.
Oh well, enough to keep on making movies, and no, but I was very, I tried to be dirty because I mean it was the punk period, and then that was the moment to make something like that, and after Laberinto de Pasiones, I mean both of them are pop movies. In Laberinto, they appear many of the musician groups that I was surrounded by then. Even myself, I sing.
You were in a band. You sang in a band. I've seen some video of you.
But I didn't want to sing. I record the song, but I didn't. I didn't. And I mean, it was someone that has to come, an actor, to play the song. But he didn't come during the shooting. And once it was noon, then I thought, well, I have to make it because I knew the words. So I asked my brother, which is around here, to go to my sisters, and the husband of my sister, it was a kind of police that they have, ¿cómo se dice? Chaquetones de cuero, chaquetones, no?
Yeah, like long leather jackets.
Then I asked my brother to take that leather jacket, and I put that only, so it was like a mini skirt. And I also asked to Cecilia Roth, that was the actress, some ears, and also the high heels. And then I started just singing. We said in English because I thought it was easier for us. The title, it was Suck It To Me. And but it was, I mean, we did it because, I mean, it was part of the game, and it was very casual. But the song became so famous that, I mean, the other guy and I, we were a duo, we were hired to make concert in Spain. And we did it in one year, but then, the people were really waiting to be scandalized by us. So in that moment, I mean, it was very funny and it is an incredible experience just to sing on one stage. I mean, with the audience there. This is something that one filmmaker doesn't know. I mean, we make a movie, and after a year and a half, that you can see the reaction, and this is not so fresh, like if you are a sportsman or a singer. So we were doing this, and then I said, no, that was enough for me, and I keep on making movies.
So your punk career was over.
yeah, because at the beginning I did it because I enjoyed a lot that experience. But what I didn't want is just to see the people waiting and hungry to be outraged. And then I was not the one to. I did it because it was fun. At the same time, if it was outrageous, I didn't mind. But I didn't try to be officially outrageous, like Madonna, for example.
Okay, I want to ask you maybe something that's related to that, which is, as a part of that scene in Madrid in the late 70s and early 80s, with the influences of punk and of political revolution, there's also the queer element as well.
Yep.
And you mentioned John Waters, and I wonder, were there other filmmakers, maybe Derek Jarman or others, that you're also looking at in terms of.
I knew Derek Jarman too.
You knew Derek Jarman, okay. So I'm wondering what that part was like, because there were certainly not nearly as many LGBTQ filmmakers then as a part of that scene. But what did that element bring to it? Kind of sexual revolution and play with gender roles as well.
Y tienen una influencia absoluta.
Yeah, I mean, they completely permeate everything in my films.
Y probablemente no todo el país estuviera follando, pero los que pertenecíamos a ese grupo, que éramos como 100 de la movida madrileña, éramos bastante promiscuos y muy libres en nuestras relaciones.
Yeah, and so I don't think the whole country was fucking, but those of us who belonged to that group, we were quite promiscuous and enjoyed it.
So, you know, since the very beginning, I mean, they were all the sexual options that you can find now, that you can talk about now, they were in my movies. And then, you know, when you are a director, you have the power of, tienes el poder de imponer tu punto de vista.
You have the power to impose your point of view.
De imponer tu mentalidad, aunque esa no sea la mentalidad de todo el mundo.
And to impose your outlook on life, even if that's not the same as everybody else's.
Y entonces, en mis películas siempre ha habido desde el principio, pero incluso en los 70, en los Super 8, siempre ha habido travestis, transexuals y todas opciones sexuales conviviendo en paz y juntas.
So
Pero no como un problema, no es como el problema de ser, no, eran parte de la vida y eran parte también de mi vida.
Yeah, so from the very beginning, including my Super 8 films, all of these different, if you like, panoplies of sexual orientation, from transvestites to transgender people to, you know, anyone, and they all were there, not even as like a problem or something that needed to be talked about, but something that was integral and part of normal reality.
So, I was very, you know, I was very lucky to start making movies at that moment.
It was such an exciting time, and I think seeing those films inspired many other filmmakers as well, who I think were influenced by you in those films that we first saw in North America in the 80s. I want to ask you a little bit about the group of actors that you worked with at that time. This is the first time many of us would have seen Antonio Banderas in your films. And then an actor like Rossi De Palma as well, who's been an icon, I think, through your films as well. And you've worked with each of them multiple times.
Yep.
How did you all come together? Was there a group that just decided to work together, or did you go and, how did it work?
No, it was very casual, you know. I mean, for example, in the 80s, I started working with Carmen Maura, with Chus Lampreave, the old lady, and with Antonio Banderas. Yes, I mean, in the case of Carmen, I was making theater with her. She was like the leading actress, and I was a very small part. And she liked very much the stories that I told her. So she was in part of my Super 8mm movies, and she was the one that pushed me to make a movie in 16mm. So, and Carmen was part of my career in the whole 80s. And Antonio, he arrived to Madrid like 2 months before, and I met him because he starts making theater, one extra without talking. And I was at that moment preparing Laberinto de Pasiones with some Arab guys. So I'm making an audition in the street. And, you know, since the very beginning, the only thing that I asked him to do it was just to walk. And that was enough just to choose him. And
You must have walked very well.
yeah. And no, and, you know, I'm serious, you know. The Spanish actors and the Spanish people in general wouldn't walk well. No, we walk like, and Antonio walked like a sportsman. Yeah. And that is much more physical. For example, the American actors, they all day work fantastically, but not in Spain. So, and also, you know, not only that, but also I told him, ask me, no, look at me. Just when he was walking, just turn around, look at me with desire in your eyes. And he did. And, you know, this is one of the, this is really one of the reasons that I was working with it all the time. I mean, the intensity when Antonio look at an object of desire, he doesn't mind if it's a sefer, if it's a man or a woman. That was very important for me because my character was very passionate. Yeah. So, and even for, just to give you an example of one American movie, Interview with a Vampire. There were Tom Cruise, there was Brad Pitt, and it was Antonio too. And they're supposed to be very passionate, Brad Pitt and Tom Cruise. I didn't feel it. Yeah. And when Antonio appears with an impossible hair like this, looking to Brad Pitt, you really believe him that he wanted to buy that guy. So Antonio and Carmen, and and also Rosie was working at that moment in one discotheque, and she just came to me directly, and she said, I mean, I really would like to make a movie with you. You know, this is something that many people tells you. But in that case, I said, of course, you deserve it. And the following day, we were shooting at the moment, Law of Desire, and I make the whole sequence. It was with this toucan profile. I don't know how to say that. Toucan?
Yeah. Toucan.
Yes. And I was so impressed, and it was also very funny. And she was very courageous to do the sequence. So when Law of Desire, when she appears in Law of Desire, I remember in every place, just when she appears, everybody's laughing. Just because, I mean, because of her face.
But it's not so much that I don't think she looks funny, but she has such a distinct face, and she looks like a Picasso. She looks like a work of art, the way her face is structured.
Absolutely, no, absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely, and also is a very good actress.
Yes.
And with the time, she learned a lot. You know, the good thing is that she didn't have any kind of complex about the nose. So, and it's true that if you have one angle, that she became a kind of icon among the best photographers in Europe. Everybody wanted to take picture of her because it's not a regular face. It was more a cubist face, but very photogenic. So with the three of them, I mean, they really represent the type of movie that I did in that decade. That it was a celebration of everything. I mean, the characters. I mean, I give to the character a lot of problems, very sometimes exaggerated situations. But to all of them, I gave, I mean, even they were women or men or whatever, I mean, a complete moral autonomy, because this is something that as a writer, as a director, I could give to the characters, to that period.
I want to hear more about what moral autonomy means to you, because I also know that the screenplay is very important to you. And when you write, from what I've read, you want to, I think the phrase was, solve all of the problems on paper. So before you get to set, before you get to the filmmaking, before you turn the camera on, structurally, and in terms of the characters, everything should be in the script. So when you're writing characters and giving them that moral autonomy, what are you looking for?
Que cuando los personajes
Y estás buscando esa
autonomía moral.
¿Qué es lo que estás buscando exactamente?
Es darle esa cualidad al personaje.
It's just to give the character that quality.
Por ejemplo, una ama de casa no es una mujer moderna, pero en su interior ella sí puede sentirse absolutamente libre, aunque esté trabajando todo el día, aunque tenga hijos, aunque tenga una vida imposible. Pero es algo interior, es una libertad interior que hace que el personaje haga cosas como las que hace Carmen Maura, por ejemplo, en ¿Qué he hecho yo para merecer esto? Mata a su marido y lo único que hace es disimular ante la policía y como si no hubiera pasado nada.
So, for example, to give you an example, a housewife is someone who's not a modern character, and she might be someone who, you know, is sort of constrained to the work of the house, to raising the children, to kind of living, if you like, a kind of ordinary life. But inside of her, right? She can have that sort of moral autonomy and that desire and that freedom in particular. And it's something that, for example, in What Have I Done to Deserve This, Carmen Maura's character goes off and kills her husband, and it's part of her own expression, right, of her own liberty.
And also, in Dark Habits, there is a lot of nuns. They are trying to make apostolado among the killers, the drug addicts, the girls with problems. And even, they are nuns, they also have this kind of freedom, because in a way they make something very Christian, which is, si Jesucristo se hizo hombre, se hizo hombre para conocer realmente a los hombres, y entonces tuvo que conocer el pecado.
So if Jesus Christ became man in order to know men better, he had to know sin.
Entonces, estas religiosas, para estar cerca de las chicas a las que redimen, llegan a convertirse en delincuentes como ellas.
And so these nuns, in order to get close to the girls that they take care of, they become delinquents themselves, in a way.
No quiero decir que delinquir sea una cosa buena.
And I'm not saying that being a delinquent is a good thing.
Pero lo que sí quiero decir es que las religiosas no estaban pensando en Dios ni en el castigo divino, sino en actuar con toda libertad, ayudando a aquellas chicas que la necesitaban. No sé si me he explicado bien.
And so what I'm saying is, for example, not that the nuns were thinking about sort of God and any kind of punishment, but what they were doing is they were really just focused on helping the girls that they had dedicated their lives to help.
It's interesting. So that moral autonomy, when we're watching your films and watching your characters, for me that translates into a kind of a freedom, because you don't know what these characters will do, because they're free to do anything, really. Yep. Which is exciting. That's an exciting kind of film to watch. At a certain point, your films begin to transition from what are almost kind of screwball comedies in a way into melodramas. Mm-hmm. And there's a period where films like Talk to Her, All About My Mother, and others, which are deeply moving films, drawing on the great melodrama tradition in Hollywood movies and elsewhere as well. I'm thinking of Douglas Sirk especially, who I know you refer to. Can you talk about making that transition yourself? Was it just a natural evolution for you, or was it a conscious choice?
Desde el principio, desde la década de los 80, empiezan ya a aparecer los temas principales que después voy a desarrollar en mis películas.
So from the beginning, from the 1980s, a lot of these main themes are already there that I'm going to then later develop.
O sea, desde el principio hay una conciencia social, por ejemplo, ¿en qué soy yo para merecer esto?, de españoles que tienen que emigrar a Madrid en busca de providencia.
So from the beginning, from What Have I Done to Deserve This, you have the story of rural immigrants who have to come into the city in order to survive.
También mi amor por el melodrama ya nace en los años 80, pero lo voy destilando y sofisticando a partir de los años. En los 90 es Tacones Lejanos, que por ejemplo, si el melodrama que hago en los 80 tiene como referente más el melodrama latino o mexicano, el melodrama de los 90, High Heels, tiene más como referencia a Douglas Sirk que los latinos.
And so, melodramas, they're present from the very beginning. What starts to happen is that in a way I start to distill some essences of melodrama. So if, for example, in the 80s, I think of the melodrama that I employed as something that is sort of closer to the Mexican melodramas. Whereas by the time we get into the 90s, with something like High Heels, I'm starting to approach a Sirkian kind of melodrama.
Otro elemento que aparece ya en los 80 es el deseo carnal.
And another of the themes that you already see in the 80s is that of carnal desire.
Que está muy presente en La Ley del Deseo, pero que está muy presente en toda mi filmografía.
Which is, of course, very present in The Law of Desire, but it's present throughout my entire filmography.
Y que es una pulsión que mueve en general a los personajes de mis historias.
And it's an impulse that is always driving my characters in my films.
También otro elemento que aparece ya en los 80 es mi amor por mi tendencia a los colores exagerados.
And another of the tendencies that you see is my love for the exaggerated color palette.
Since the beginning, I remembered the movies that I saw when I was a child, and they were made in Technicolor. So I was always looking for that kind of colors, that they were very explosive and very vibrant. And that was also at the beginning, and I was, and also since the beginning, siempre he mezclado los géneros.
And I've always mixed genres.
Exceptuando tal vez Mujeres al Borde, que es como para mí es como una screwball comedy.
Yeah, not maybe in Women on the Verge, because that's really like a screwball comedy.
Y fue la primera película que pudo verla de general audience. Y yo pensando sobre eso, es que when we were shooting Women on the Verge, Carmen Maura told me, Pedro, do you realize that this is the first movie that they can see our nephews? I don't. Why? And it was true that the rhythm of the movie, it's so fast, so hysterical, that, you don't have time to make sex or to do drugs, because, that needs a little time for the ritual.
Yeah.
So that was the reason, but I was not conscious. I didn't make it deliberately. I always mixed genres. I didn't, for example, with the following short, because talking about the Western is a genre that it was created here. So I wanted to be very respectful because it doesn't belong to my culture and belongs to a very different culture than mine. So no quería cometer ningún anacronismo.
I didn't want it to sort of fall into anachronisms.
Pero nunca he tenido miedo a los anacronismos.
Even though I'm not really scared of anachronism.
I think they're fine. I want to ask you a little bit more about approaching the Western. I think most people who know your work will know that there was a moment when you might have directed Brokeback Mountain and did not. And I think you have a significant criticism of that film, not enough sex. But I want to ask you about how long have you been interested in the Western, and why did you approach it now?
When I arrived to Madrid, I was not the type of guy that when I was a kid played Indians or cowboys. I was not. But I discovered the genre when I came to Madrid and visit and stay in Madrid. I was 18 years old, and I went every day to the Cinematheque, and that was the moment when I discovered the movies of every style, every period and every place. And then it was when I discovered Western, and I was very impressed because I didn't know that the Western could be like The Searchers or Red River, because that was not the type of Western that we saw in our little village. During the 80s, I made two movies that I include part of two Westerns. In Women on the Verge, they are dubbing actors, and they are dubbing a wonderful sequence of Johnny Guitar. When Sterling Hayden asked to Joan Crawford to say, lie to me, and tell me that you were waiting for me all this time. And so it was, that was, the Western was present. And also it's a very peculiar Western. The Western is a male genre, and I think that Johnny Guitar is the only one that I know that it was, the protagonists, they were women.
Yeah, that's
very
right.
masculinized, Joan Crawford and Miss Sarah McCambridge, but they were the one who wore the pants and the pistols. And also in Matador, when the couple of protagonists, she's running away from a guy that is que está detrás de ella.
Who's chasing her?
Cuando entran en un cine, están poniendo la última parte de Duel in the Sun.
And as they enter a theater, they catch the last part of Duel in the Sun.
Right.
Duel in the Sun representa mucho un tipo de western muy enloquecido que a mí me gustaba mucho.
And so for
Muy
me,
desaforado.
yeah, for me, Duel in the Sun is kind of sort of almost like a scatterbrained Western that I really enjoyed watching.
Y ellos ven la última escena en la que Jennifer Jones le dispara mientras es disparada por Gregory Peck. Ambos se disparan, ambos se hieren mortalmente y ambos de común acuerdo reptan para morir juntos en un abrazo eterno, que es como, quiero decir, no se puede ser más melodramático ni más excesivo.
Yeah, so for example, right, the closing scene of that film, you've got Jennifer Jones who shoots Gregory Peck, he shoots her back, they're both wounded, now they're gonna die, so they go off and die in an embrace together. And I can't think of anything more melodramatic than that.
So all of that leads us to Strange Way of Life, which is the film we're about to see. And I wonder if you could just tell us a little bit about that.
I talk about the Brokeman thing, but you asked me about that. Yes, they proposed me to make the movie. I knew already the short tale of Annie Proulx, and I was a big fan of the tale. And the script was good enough. But thinking about the original, there were much more physicality than in the script. Because the two shepherds, they were trying to look for heat, to warm each other. I mean, they didn't know that they were falling in love. They didn't understand that. It was just like two animals trying to get warmer in that cold mountain. So I thought that it was necessary to be more explicit in that relationship. But anyway, I think that the real reason it was that I didn't think that I didn't have enough confidence in myself to do it, and also to change little parts of the script. But I thought it was great that Ali made the movie, and I loved the movie.
Great. So now you have made your Western, Strange Way of Life.
Yes.
What would you like to tell us about it before we watch it?
Yeah. Well, I can make an introduction because I wrote it and rehearse. But anyway, just talking again, just a minute, about Brokeback Mountain. There is in this movie that you are going just to see, I mean, the last sentence that Pedro Pascal says to Ethan Hawke is an answer of, I mean, that 18 years later gives to Brokeback Mountain. In Brokeback Mountain, there is a moment where Jake Gyllenhaal asked to Heath Ledger why they don't take a ranch and grow up animals and live together and all that. And then Heath Ledger dice, pero ¿qué pueden hacer dos tíos viviendo en un rancho?
But what could two guys do together living on a ranch?
Well, then 18 years later, Pedro Pascal gives an answer to that question of Heath Ledger. And you are going about to see.
Okay, thank you.
I wrote something, and I even rehearsed the pronunciation, because I know that is very bad. Well, then I say again, good evening, and thanks a lot for being here. This is true. This is the happiest moment of my week. I'm standing, well, I thought that I would be standing here with that, but the important thing is that with a big screen behind me, where one of my movies will be projected to a room full of people. There is nothing that can match this feeling, and it's only possible because of you. Strange Way of Life is my first Westerns, and for once, I have tried to remain faithful to a genre. You won't find an eclectic narrative here, as in any of my other movies, where I usually mix several genres. The Western is 100% American, I said that before. When I decided to tackle a genre that belongs to a different culture, I made sure to avoid anachronism. The title is the exception. Strange Way of Life is the title of a Portuguese father's son, and although I'm fully aware that Portuguese was neither spoken nor sung in the Wild West, I was drawn to the lyrics of the song that speaks to how strange it is to live a life with your back turned to your desires. This sentiment, sung by Caetano Veloso, is the perfect introduction to the story I want to tell. I don't know, I wrote something else, but I don't know if perhaps it's too much, because perhaps you are in a hurry.
You should watch the film, but is there anything else you want to say?
Yeah, no, yes. there's something about, perhaps I try to say, yes, you know, approaching this genre, of course, I mean, I didn't invent anything, but I was very attracted to make something that I didn't see before in other movies, that it was talking about desire in one genre that is full of men. There is a male genre. And I never saw desire between two men in this type of movies. So this is the main subject, the main topic of this movie, desire, between Pedro Pascal and Ethan Hawke. And just to finish, if there are some or many fans of Pedro Pascal and Ethan Hawke, I'm sorry to say that they are not naked in the movie. There is a big, it happens, but you know, you have different ways to say that with an ellipsis. There is a night full of sex and and alcohol, but we don't see that. I make an ellipsis, and because for me the more important thing it was just to pay attention to the words they say after being this very warm night. And I prefer not to show naked bodies, but to make the words that both of them are talking. And they are much more expressive than the bodies, and much more important, and much more moving. I think more or less this is something. And just that, I thank you for coming, and this is a big joy for me to be, just to see you sitting down there. And I hope, and I hope you enjoyed. You are not going to see the naked, but you are going to see two wonderful performances from both of them. So I hope you enjoyed and perhaps to be moved by the movie. Thank you for coming.
Thank you. Age, Pedro Almodóvar.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
And thank you, Carla, for interpreting as well. We're going to go to you and your questions in a moment. I'll just have one more question for you, Pedro. I'm struck as we talk that you're very conscious of the evolution of your filmmaking, your career from one film to the other. These appear to be very conscious choices to move from one kind of filmmaking, one kind of style to another, or to turn corners and to create a new kind of Pedro Almodóvar film. Can you talk about making those choices consciously over the last 40 years almost?
Sí, bueno, iba cambiando yo creo que también de un modo casi orgánico, o sea, biológico.
Yeah, the changes in my mind are also more organic, almost biological.
Trataba siempre de no hacer una película como la anterior.
I was always trying not to make a film that was just like the one I had made before.
A pesar de que todas tienen algo en común, son los distintos eslabones de una cadena.
And even though they all have something in common and they're like different elements of a chain link fence.
Pero, por ejemplo, cuando hago todo sobre mi madre, se abre un nuevo periodo para mí.
But for example, when I do All About My Mother, a new period opens up for me.
No solo empieza un nuevo siglo, sino que también mi madre muere. Y yo creo que de inmediato hago probablemente las 3 mejores películas que he hecho hasta ahora.
And so not only is the beginning of a new century, but my mother also dies then. And then after that, I make, I think, my 3 best films.
Que son Talk to Her, Bad Education and Volver. Y es un momento en el que, I mean, this is a moment when I have 50 years old, and this is the first moment that I look back. I didn't have the necessity of looking back before, perhaps because I didn't have a good memories of my childhood. But in this moment, I look back, and the result of this gaze is bad education, which represents, I mean, the worst part of my education when I was a kid, and Volver, that represents exactly the opposite. I mean, the more positive things that I remember of my childhood, because till that moment I didn't realize really that I was raised by these women in the street around my mother, and that also my work depends a lot of the kind of lesson that I receive from them. You know, in this century, there is also, I mean, I make many, but there is also one more moment when I am thinking that I'm trying to make something in another way, which is when I start Julieta. When I start Julieta, I wanted, I mean, it was very attractive to me to change and to be much more austere, much more restrained, because of the subject, and also because just trying not to repeat myself. And then so Julieta and, for example, Pain and Glory, and also Parallel Mothers belongs to that period, which is the last period of my career. But, pero lo he hecho siempre como algo orgánico, o sea, no con la pretensión como de inventar o de, sino de lo que me iban pidiendo las historias, y también de acuerdo con mi propia fisiología.
So yes, so in a sense, it's something that always happened organically. I did it with no pretension to sort of reinvent myself, but it's something that the stories themselves were demanding of me.
Quiero decir, al principio de mi carrera yo vivía de un modo coral, rodeado de gente, y sin embargo al final de mi carrera vivo mucho más aislado, y eso es evidente en las películas que hacía entonces y ahora.
So for example, in the beginning of my career, I lived surrounded by people, you know, living sort of a very vibrant life, and now I live a much more solitary life, and you see that reflected in my films.
We should go to you and your questions. I'm sure there will be a number. I think we have... Okay.
Hola.
Okay, calma. We'll go right here, please. Is the microphone coming? It's, yeah, behind you.
Okay, the microphone doesn't work. Oh, it does. Okay, so your films often feature complex characters and blur the line between gay and straight, coerced and consensual, comedy and melodrama. How do you approach creating such multi-dimensional characters, and what inspires you to challenge societal norms in your storytelling?
En mis películas o en esta. La mezcla de géneros es algo también, cuando digo orgánico, pertenece a mi naturaleza.
So for example, when I say that the mixing of genres is something that is organic to me, it's almost part of my nature.
Pero también pertenece al periodo cultural en el que nazco como cineasta, que es, digamos, la época postmoderna.
And it also belongs to the period in which I'm sort of born as a filmmaker, which is a very postmodern landscape.
Y también porque yo creo que a lo largo del día, por ejemplo, uno pasa por diferentes géneros. O sea, puede pasar por muchos géneros, desde la comedia al terror.
So,
and
sorry, and also it's true that during the day, even oneself goes through any number of genres. You can go from comedy to terror in your own life.
Y para mí ha sido algo natural, que reconozco que ha costado tiempo para que sobre todo los críticos americanos reconozcan que es algo legítimo que puedo hacer.
And it has taken some time, particularly for American critics, to realize and to accept that this is something that can be done and that I do.
Porque yo recuerdo al principio de los 80 aquí que me decían, pero ¿debo reírme o debo llorar?
So, for example, people used to ask me, so am I supposed to laugh or am I supposed to cry?
Y yo le decía, las dos cosas, y si puedes, a la vez.
And I would say both things, and if you can, you should do them at the same time.
Thank you. All right, let's go back here, right there. Yep. Oh, there's a microphone, I think, on its way to you. I'm sorry, we'll...
Yes.
Oh, I see. Sorry, we have someone here first, and then we'll go back here.
Ok. Antes que nada, Pedro, buenas tardes.
Buenas tardes.
Y antes de hacer mi pregunta, te quiero decir de que te quiero desear un feliz cumpleaños 25 de septiembre,
Muchísimas gracias.
ya que los dos somos de la misma quinta, porque
Sí.
tengo 71 años. Y he vivido gran parte de tu carrera cuando veía las películas en la Gran Vía, ya en Madrid.
Sí, sí, sí.
Ya que nosotros pasamos una época muy difícil en la época de Franco, y en la época que tú empezaste fue una época muy especial porque fue nuestra liberación de tantos años, tú
Sí.
lo sabes.
Sí, sí.
Mi pregunta, estoy representando al magazine Positive Diva desde Chile, que he viajado para verte, y quiero preguntarte, tú sabes que Pedro Pascal es nuestro chileno muy querido, ¿y qué posibilidad tenemos de poder tenerte ahí en Chile? Sería un placer. Esa es mi pregunta.
De tenerme físicamente allí.
Sí, sería muy
Eh,
especial porque te queremos muchísimo.
Sí.
So I'm gonna
Igual,
yes,
igual, igual.
I'm gonna summarize, but she's wishing him happy birthday. She remembers watching films in la Gran Vía in Madrid, and Pedro's films were very significant to her. And she's asking a question about Pedro Pascal, who's Chilean. She's also Chilean. And when will Pedro come to Chile?
Pedro Pascal, ¿no?
No, Pedro,
Mi-
tú.
Bueno, quiero decir, basta hacer una retrospectiva de mis películas y yo estaré encantado de ir, si no estoy trabajando en ese momento.
Yeah. All you can do is, if you have a retrospective on my films, I will be very glad to come.
All right. Thank you. We will go here now. The gentleman who had his hand up right here. Yeah, go ahead. Actually, no, it was behind you. There's a gentleman with, I think, a light-colored shirt. Thank you.
Hi there. It's okay if I do the question in Spanish as well. I mean, bueno, hola. Hola, Pedro. Quiero decirte que muchas gracias por toda tu filmografía. Eres una inspiración muy grande, no solo para nosotros, sino que para el futuro de todos los jóvenes que somos filmmakers. Yo soy estudiante de cine y me has inspirado muchísimo. Muchas gracias por todo eso. También muchas gracias por poner el nombre de todos los países hispanohablantes en alto. Nos has inspirado mucho a creer en sí mismos. Has mencionado anteriormente que tus colores en todas tus películas son porque querías hacer un tipo de, pues, sí, como aesthetic, ¿no? de antes, pero ese rojo Almodóvar tiene un significado o tiene algo que nos quieras decir. Y también pues muchas gracias a tu hermano Agustín, que es uno de los grandes productores y también lo admiro muchísimo.
And once again, I'm going to be brief. He's a film student has been very influenced by Pedro's films and wants to thank Pedro for all his work. And the question is about your use of the color red. The use of the color red in your films, that very iconic Almodóvar red. Is there a meaning to the color red in your films?
Sí, el color rojo es un color muy potente, pero a la vez peligroso, porque depende de los colores que pongas al lado, puede devorar el color que le pones al lado.
So red is a very powerful color, but it's also a very dangerous color, because it's a color that anything you put next to the red can almost sort of consume it and take over it.
En la cultura de la que vengo, la española, el rojo es muy importante y representa elementos muy, muy importantes de la vida de las personas. El rojo es el color de la pasión, es el color de la muerte, es el color del deseo y es el color del fuego.
So the culture that I come from, red signifies a lot of things. Red is the color of passion. Red is the color of desire. And I'm going to forget all four.
Passion,
desire,
fire,
fire,
and passion, desire. I said four.
and death. Thank you. Thank you.
I'm thinking about the first period that I was more influenced by pop. I was influenced by the American pops, but also by the English pop filmmaker, like for example, Richard Lester. And you know, una de las combinaciones del primer pop, digamos del pop más blando de los 60, es el rojo y el blanco.
So for example, one of the first combinations of very early pop is red and white.
Y esa es una de las razones también por las que lo utilizo.
And that's one of the reasons I also use the color red.
Okay, thank you. Unfortunately, I know there's so many people who want to ask questions. We're going to have to wrap it up.
And
though.
excuse me, and also because, I mean, when I made Women in the US for the Financial Breakdown, I decided absolutely to put a red suit on Carmen because there is a lot of sequence in the night, and the red is perfect for the night. I mean, the cinematographer is a color easy to light on in the. And also when I use, I don't know, I mean, no sé nada de automóviles, pero si un automóvil tiene que cruzar una carretera con un fondo verde o en un campo, el color siempre es rojo, el color del automóvil.
Yeah.
Si se fija, verá que todos los coches de mis películas son rojos.
And also, and not that I know anything about cars, but for some reason, if you have a car and you're going to shoot a car that's going across a landscape and there's green in the background, red is also going to be the best color. And you will notice in most of my films, cars are always red.
Okay. We are out of time, unfortunately, but I've just been so honored, and I hope you have been too, to be in the presence of one of the greatest artists in cinema,
Thank you.
Pedro Almodóvar. Thank you.
Thank you so much.